Alright, today I have the final Beyblade X release of 2025, MummyCurse. So let's go ahead and open this up and check it out. Alright, I have everything opened up now, so first we have the instructions, as always. So moving on to something actually interesting, the bit. Wedge. So Wedge is a reused bit from Perseus Dark. A lot more shallow than most other defense bits. 10 gears. Also, yeah, this is meant to kind of get itself off of the extreme line to conserve stamina, which is a pretty nice gimmick for a defense type like the color here as well. But yeah, reused a bit. That said, we do have a new ratchet in 755. Another 55 height ratchet. Quite bulky, though it is different than the regular 7-sided ratchets. It is brown, so I guess that's cool. I am starting to get a little bit worried about these simple ratchets, though. I feel like we're getting a lot of them when they generally aren't really ideal for most bays. So hopefully that's just coincidental and not a sign of things to come. But this one actually does seem pretty alright, so I'm not too upset over it. As for the blade, we of course have MummyCurse, which looks pretty nice. Very thick blade. Unique color scheme with the gold and the blue. And it does have a gimmick, of course, being a UX bay. Well, not all UX bays have gimmicks, but anyway. This part can sort of come out. So basically how that works is when you launch the bay, has a lot of spin, that part is forced out. It's sort of a counter-attack gimmick. We've seen things like this before, but usually it's an attack gimmick. I think it's something like Beat a Culkin from Beyblade Burst. Although that one was click-based, but the protrusion was very, very similar. I guess you could also go back to like Metal Fight with Very Aries, as that was technically defense type, and with that you had parts that actually came inward, but it gave stronger contact points, so it's kind of the inverse gimmick, but the same idea of having stronger attacks, when at higher speeds. I think it's a pretty cool idea. The whole counter defense thing, sure, why not? My only real complaint with this gimmick is that it's plastic. Why could this not have just been like metal? That would have been very, very helpful. But as is, I mean, it's still kind of cool. It's just, you know, durability wise, I'm not sure. Not sure on that one. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the weights. So first up, Wedge. This is 1.83 grams, 755, 5.31 grams, both these parts are pretty light. And then MummyCurse is 37.36 grams, that's actually fairly heavy I would say, and then of course getting the full combo here, it's, you know, 44.5 grams, which isn't anything too crazy, but again, the bit and ratchet are fairly light, so it's actually not too bad. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and actually put this thing together. So here we have MummyCurse, 755 Wedge. Looks pretty nice, I would say. Again, this part, very, very interesting. So I guess let's go ahead and talk a bit about this base. I don't have anything else to compare it to, as it is a new motif. So aesthetically, this is kind of a strange bay. It's not the most interesting, but it is kind of interesting. The shape here between like the top half and bottom half isn't entirely uniform, it's a little bit different. And also the color scheme is pretty odd with kind of the tannish gold and the blue. And of course you have like the darker brown, and then, you know, this kind of teal. So it is a weirdly colored bay, but that's kind of cool. The bay honestly just reminds me a lot of Minoboros from Beyblade Burst. Almost a mix of Minoboros and Mad Minoboros a little bit with the shape. And especially so with like this part right here. That seems like straight from Mad Minoboros almost. Like if Mad Minoboros had a god evolution, I'd imagine it could have something a lot like this. I still don't think it's like the craziest bay aesthetically, so I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. Because it's not crazy, but it is still cool, and reminding me of Minoboros is a good thing. So I'd say I'm at least a fan of it. Conceptually is where this bay is a little bit weird. As always, if a bay has a gimmick in Beyblade X, that's insane. We like barely ever get anything interesting, so for me it's already going to be a very high rating. But does this sort of counter defense idea warrant a really high score, like a 10? Probably not. Maybe if it was metal, I'd give it a bit of a higher score, because I'm not sure it has the impact they maybe would want it to have. But I think the rest of the shape, and honestly 755 works well for it, so that's fine. Wedge, I think, is an interesting choice, as I think Wedge does work fine for this bay, but you could argue it might want a more aggressive bit to really work in that sort of, you know, like counter defense idea, counter attack, whatever you want to call it. Maybe something that would actually want to extreme dash kind of quickly. But at the same time, I could see the argument here for Wedge, where you already have something that might, you know, harm your stamina. So you maybe don't want to go all in on that, and you want to have a bit that helps you to conserve stamina, while your blade does some attacking that, you know, might limit the stamina potential of the bay, but it's also a good reason to do so. It's a weird bay, but I think the idea is definitely there. I still like it a pretty fair amount, I would say. So conceptually, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Again, in Beyblade X, if there's a moving part in the blade, it's getting a very high score for me because we just don't see that enough at all, especially now that we're in year 3. So for that alone, I'd give it like an 8. I think it is still interesting enough to warrant a 9. Just not quite crazy enough for a 10, but a moving part is a huge deal for me. So I think that's basically everything I have to say about MummyCurse. It's not a crazy bay by any means, it's just kind of cool. I do prefer to Meteor Dragoon between the 2 December releases, which is weird, but I guess that's fine. Oh, and one other quick thing I don't like about this bay, I don't like the name very much. Just a random thing, I just don't really like it, but whatever. But with that, that's basically everything to say about this bay. The good news is, I now have every single 2025 Beyblade X bay, which means ranking video coming pretty soon, probably sometime later next week, as unfortunately I do have some stuff to do before then, but it should be up pretty soon, within the next few days for sure. So until then, thanks for watching, and bye-bye.